Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how I write a song by taking a look at a tune from my band Either Or called Executive Summary. So in this video, I'll show you guys some of the compositional techniques that I use as well as the thought process behind them. And hopefully these are things that you guys can apply to your own songwriting and playing. Without further ado then, let's get started. Okay, so before we get started today, I just want to mention that this song was written for a two-piece band. And when we're writing music, one thing that is always important to consider when you're writing a song for any sort of group is to consider the instrumentation of the band itself. So in this case, there's only a guitar and a drum set. So when I was writing this song, I had to keep that in mind as there were certain duties that would have to be filled completely by me. For example, there would be no other instrument that could supply harmony, meaning I had to fill out the harmony as much as I could, and there would be very little, harmonic counterpoint happening as well beyond just whatever I could do by myself. So if you're writing for a two-piece band or a four-piece band, consider that what you write will have to fit that certain context. Anyways, starting with the song, the first idea that I wrote was this. This idea here was the first thing that I actually brought to my bandmate, and we decided to start with this idea, learn it, together, and then try to expand out from it as a whole. So as another aside thing, for me, when I'm writing songs, I tend to avoid an approach where I have a bunch of, riffs and ideas and I piece them together. And I prefer to start with a single idea and use that as a seed for other ideas. So I'll take I'll start with a piece of material and I'll try to write based off of it, thinking about the themes that are present within the idea, whether they're rhythmic or harmonic ideas, and I'll also think about some of the aesthetics of that idea and how they can be replicated for future sections that sound different. And for me, that's an important thing to do, as that allows us to develop some cohesion within the composition so that when people listen back to the song, they're able to, follow it more easily and also have a sense of, the fact that they're listening to a certain tune a couple minutes down the line from when it started. So yeah, start with a seed idea and develop it from there if you want to write more cohesive sounding songs. But anyways, so we started with this idea, which again sounded like this. And we thought about some of the things that were in this idea. So for the most part, it's loud and it's got a lot of energy behind it. So we wanted to contextualize this idea based on that fact. And so we decided that what we would want to do is write a B section in relation to this idea here. And so for our B section, we would want to use kind of similar chords and harmony and maybe have a rhythm that wasn't too completely different. So what we came up with was something like this. So basically we just have some simple minor seventh chord and major seventh chords here going in a kind of triplet rhythm, and the basic melody is something like just something that's kind of easy and catchy that people can follow along with. So anyways, in order to link the A section, or this first part here, which we'll call A for now, in order to link this section to this new B section part, we wanted to write a transition. And so the transition that we used was something like this. And so this will play out at the end of that first idea that we had. And for writing this section here, what we did is we took some of the rhythmic material from the A section and used it in our transition just so that we had some cohesion. So recall again, the rhythm in the initial line here had something that kind of went like this. And so we wanted to treat that as a theme. And so for our new part then, we did exactly that, stealing the rhythm, but just applying different chords to it. So you can see how that kind of works there. And then moving on from that, so we played this B section, I think it was 4 times in the song, and then I ring out a chord, giving the song some space since a lot of things are happening. And we just switched to a single texture where the drums complete a sort of groove on its own, and then we cut to some silence. And then what happens is I start the A section again, which begins on a pickup, and the drums kick back in. We play this for, I think, 2 repeats, and then we do our transition again. back to the B section. And so from here, we thought it'd be a good idea to extend the length of this part, since we only played it 4 times in the first, I guess, like instance that happened. And so extending it here kind of creates a different quality, I guess, in terms of the listening experience. By drawing it out, that allows us to develop a groove and give something that the listener can kind of latch onto, and also just kind of like digest. Since when you're writing these kind of crazy progressive songs, when people are hearing them for the first time, I find that if things are too crazy and there are too many ideas happening, that can tend to make the song feel very long and exhausting. So by having a part that was kind of simple here, I guess in direct contrast to this first part, which is more complicated, that would allow to create an effect like that. But anyway, so we played this part 8 times, and then on the last time, we decided that we wanted to go into something completely different. So to signify that we were exiting this section, we decided to write another fill idea. And this time we did another thing where we would take some motivic material from a previous idea and use it to inform our new idea here. So in this case, I came up with a fill that sounded like, and then the drums do a little roll, I guess like a measure 5/8, and it's like diddle 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 diddle. And then I play a shot there and we go into complete silence. So in terms of that motivic material that I talked about, the motif here was the pickup from the A section, but I just used it in a kind of different context. So that's something that I really like to do, and I really recommend that you guys try in your writing. Use themes so that you can make things kind of stick together. But anyway, so yeah, we stopped from there, and we kind of had this little, I guess, repeating A and B section in isolation as a piece of music. And so the next thing that we did was we kind of stopped and thought about what would need to happen next. And we decided actually to work backwards and write an introduction to the song. So up to this point, this part here was kind of leading off the tune, but it was a bit too kind of explosive. Not really in a technical sense, but in a dynamic sense. And so we wanted something that would help to make this song feel more grandiose. I guess we wanted to write a longer composition as a whole. And so by easing the listener in with a more simple idea, we thought that that might add some more balance to the song in that regard. And so to do that, we decided to write a simple down-tempo chord progression with more hushed dynamics that would eventually lead into this bigger part here. And so to do that, we wrote something that sounded like this. Etc. So what's happening here is we just kind of have something in a kind of 3/4 feel, and I'm just doing a bunch of different arpeggiations of chords. So we have like a B6/9 chord, and then a C sharp minor 7 / minor 9 chord, followed by a B add 9 sound, and another C sharp minor 9, but with a doubled third. And so we played this for a couple times, and the drums are just on the floor tom, kind of filling out the rest of the sound. And eventually, once we'd kind of like built it up a little bit, adding up some dynamics, we decided to do a hard stop. We used another drum fill, and then we used another shot. So I guess we could say that this is kind of motivic material again, with how I ended the very end of that kind of B section idea that I was talking about a couple minutes ago, the one where I went. So I did the exact kind of similar thing here after the intro that we wrote. And I encourage you guys to listen back to this executive summary song and hear for that, because I think that's kind of a neat little thing that I thought about there. But anyways, there's actually more motivic material being used in this part too. So recall this part here. I use this exact same chord and picking pattern at the end of the end of this idea. And so that's kind of more balance between those first two parts. So a lot of this stuff was, I guess, very deliberate in that sense. There's a lot of thinking about these kind of themes. So anyways, now that we had that intro worked out and we had this other kind of A and B alternating part worked out as well, then we moved on to, I guess, thinking about how to advance the song. So we stopped and we had like, I guess, a kind of maybe 4-measure pause before kicking things off into what we decided would be a groove in 7/8. And so the chords that I picked, or I guess like the chords and the rhythm kind of sounded like this afterwards. We have like a 1, 2. And so the dynamics here are really hushed. And ultimately, we didn't really have a distinct plan for this part here, but we wanted to kind of just do what felt natural. So we were going to work with developing ideas in 7/8 time, and then we would move on from that. So I played this chord progression, and then I moved on to, I guess, a more loud and dynamic version of it, just playing it harder, until we eventually moved into this new chord progression that was kind of played in a way that would give the listener some space and breathing room. And so during this part here too, the drums kind of hushed down a little bit as well. And we open up the floor for a new sound, hopefully kind of giving us this roller coaster effect. And I just want to mention the harmony here. So for this section, I'm working on the 4 chord. This is all in B major, by the way. So the 4 chord, the 1 chord, and then we have the 1 chord again, but in its first inversion. And then we go to the 2 chord, some kind of C sharp minor 9 thing. And so when we're playing this hushed part here, we play this like 2 times, making sure everything comes down. And then we move into a more heavy and technical section, which sounds like this. So this part here is really simple, actually. So all I'm doing is I'm taking that first set of chords that preceded this part, and I'm just adding some tapping in a slightly upper register part. And by doing this, this kind of just helps to add a little more kind of technical flair while still keeping the chords and harmonies intact. And also just keeping, I guess, the essence of the previous section still alive. And so this is all still happening in 7/8. So what happens here is we do this tapping, and then I move on to a new set of chords. So we've got an E minor 7 in first inversion, and then we move up to this F sharp major chord, also in first inversion, and then we move on to this B6 chord, and I'm still doing all the tapping while this is happening. And as we do this, like the energy and intensity was really building up. And so we thought that, okay, like whatever would happen after this would have to be some kind of climax. And so again, we did a hard pause, stop, and we just kind of thought about different ideas. Like quite literally in the music, we did a hard stop. So if you listen to the song, I think it ends with like, and it's like stop, 1, 2, and then we go into something else. So for this next idea, we thought it would be appropriate to play some shots, just so that we could amp up the dynamics and really send home, I guess, like a big climax here. And so the shots kind of sounded like this, and they were based off an E major 9 chord. And so this part on its own is pretty simple, but it comes after, I guess, 2 beats of silence. And so when we come out of that silence, this part is actually pretty heavy, and really kind of smacks the listener over the head, I guess, with another in-your-face idea. And so what we do with this is we play this idea, I think it's like 2 or 4 times, and then we move into just a slightly intensified version of those shots that we had started with. So we move into something like... And so what's happening here is I'm playing a slightly bigger voicing, and I'm also playing a different chord at the start of the shot. So this chord is another B6/9 chord, and we've got a nice note here in the upper voicing, which just helps to ascend the harmony, making it sound as if something's happening here. So moving on from this, we decided to go into a new part, which goes like... What's what's cool about this is this part here is basically a build-up moving into something else. And what's also neat about it is that it shares some of the melodic and rhythmic material from the idea that came before it, just like we'd been doing previously with other bits of this song. So that material is this part here. So this little riff is used actually in what's called a fragmentation technique, where we take the end of a particular line and we use that as material to start a new line. So in this case here, I just stole this thing from the previous bit, literally just taking it right off the end, and I use that to start a new line, which helps to create a very seamless transition. So in context, the whole thing sounds like this. So as you can see here, one of the things that I did was I actually didn't even complete the last measure of this idea. Instead, I just went into this completely new line, which I thought was kind of a cool effect, since it just basically smeared two parts together in a way, which is kind of a cool effect, to me at least. So anyways, we play this part a couple times, and then it reaches a climax, and up to this point, we had a couple of different ideas. So one of the things that I thought about, which could be a potentially solid ending to this song, would be to bookend it. So perhaps returning to the intro, actually, like the very beginning of the song, and maybe playing that in a different way. Maybe playing it with more intensity, or maybe changing the feel to like 6/8 or something on the drums, or changing just any bit of the instrumentation and rhythm in that regard. But we decided not to go in that direction. And actually another thing that we thought about maybe would be to go back to this part here. But for whatever reason, we decided that we didn't like both of those ideas, and we wanted to go into another part. And so the part that we chose was actually a riff that I'd written before. So I said previously that I don't like to take pre-existing riffs and I guess like combine them all into a song, but I mean, that's just kind of a general thing. Like if you have a riff that you think is really going to work in a particular tune, then by all means, go ahead and use it. And so the riff that I wanted to use here was something like... So we have this kind of like, I don't know, smooth pseudo R&B groove basically that I play here. And so we just thought it'd be cool to just vamp on this, since we've had a lot of different changes throughout the song. Yeah, so just vamp on it, allow things to develop underneath it, and maybe use this as an opportunity to give the listener just something that they can hang on to and hopefully have, I guess, get stuck in their head. And so for this part, when I play it live, I use a looper pedal to loop this line, and then I had a little lead line that goes over top. Just kind of sounds like that. So just kind of little simple licks and little textures that will just go over top of the line behind it without interfering with it too much. And so we did that for a bit, and then one of the things that I think I suggested was for Adrian to switch from the hi-hats. So he was playing his part on the hi-hats for about 4 measures. I suggested that he switch from the hi-hats to the ride cymbal just to open things up and give the sound a bit of a shift in what was happening. And so he does that for a little bit. And then there's, I guess, like 2 measures later, I stopped playing my lead line, and we decided to give him a bit of a drum solo, or just kind of a part where he can take more liberties with the sound, do some fills and stuff like that. And so he does that for 2 measures, and then we decide to think about an ending. And so for the ending, we kind of just wrote something that sort of sounds like... So it sort of sounds like that. Sorry for the mistake there. But anyways, this ending just kind of uses a lot of the same kind of like harmonic colors that we'd been messing around with, just so that I guess we could, like add a punctuating statement to the song and just say like, hey, this executive summary song came from this universe of guitar chords, and here it is all put together. So as a side note, we actually decided on this name because this song kind of seemed funny to us in that it was just such a distilled essence of our sound. And so in a way, like I thought it was kind of like a statement for policymakers. You know, if someone was writing like a policy report on either or, maybe this would be the most either or sounding song, because it just uses all of these chords and tricks that we like to use. And so as a result of that too, like we actually wrote this song extremely fast, like maybe within the course of an hour, just because it was so within our sound. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the quick and dirty explanation of how this tune was written, and hopefully that was informative. Yeah, cool. Anyways, folks, so there you have it. If you like this video, then please make sure to like, share, and subscribe as I put out a new video every single week. And if you want to support the channel, then please consider checking out my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you guys will have access to some bonus content like guitar tabs, lesson notes, chord diagrams, and other goodies of that nature. And honestly, the Patreon page really helps me out, as it allows me to get some extra equipment to make these videos even better. And finally, I also teach guitar lessons through Skype. There's a link to my email address in the description below. Yeah, so thank you all for watching. Hopefully I was able to give you guys some good tips, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.